Okay, before we begin, I am going to establish a few things. 1, I'm sick. I'm recovering from a cold or whatever. My voice is still a little nasally though, so if that annoys you, I'm sorry, but it's what we're working with. 2, I'm a former dreamsmp fan. I was in the fandom in middle and early high school. And if you're in a similar boat or are still in the fandom, I literally hold nothing against you. It would be hypocritical of me to do that. And I can be a hypocrite sometimes, but I'm not that tone deaf. 3, I'm not really the kind of person to post my opinions online, especially not in this format. So if this sucks, I'm sorry. But with that out of the way, let's begin. So the dreamsmp fandom, as it was in the early half of the decade, was a really weird intersection of the worst parts of fandom and general internet culture. It was a fandom surrounding real people, influencers if you will, online, and that was kind of a perfect mix to result in the most black and white thinking you ever did see. Now, I know it was technically about characters, but that breaches into another topic of conversation, which could really become its own video. The fact of the matter, though, is that those characters were basically just the people playing them, and with the subpar acting jobs some of these guys were giving, the veil was incredibly thin. Which brings us to the fact that fandoms surrounding real people all have one big folly: the morality of it all. YouTubers and influencers cannot be perfect, and never will be, and yet people always treat them like they are until it's impossible to ignore that humanity. Now, cancel culture is something that I think is majorly flawed and largely ineffective, but it's something you can't avoid if you're online and keeping up with all of the bullshit that goes on between big public figures. Having a following means the standards you're held to are genuinely insane, and I'm of the opinion that it's only a matter of time until any and every YouTuber falls under the scrutiny of people online, no matter what it's for. Now, when talking about the dreamsmp fandom in particular, we're gonna have to couple that with how fandom culture as a whole operates, which is to say, largely the same as general internet culture, but instead that rigid moral code is turned on every member of the community, including whoever makes the piece of media that the fandom surrounds. And sometimes the characters within the media, which is also an entire other topic that I could go on an entire separate video about. But anyone who's familiar with how fandom operates has likely seen firsthand how quickly shipping wars or what have you turn into fights about who's morally superior. And let me tell you, there was plenty of that in the dreamsmp fandom. Also, side note, before I keep going, I'm gonna refer to the dreamsmp fandom in the past tense for the purposes of this video, but I want to make it clear that the fandom does still exist. It's much smaller and much quieter now, but it's definitely not gone. Anyways, so if you take what I've put before you and combine it, you can see that could cause a bit of a clusterfuck of a fandom. And that's not even to mention the fact that the majority of the dreamsmp's fans at its peak were children. Hell, I was 13 when I got into it. You can do the math from there. Even back then, I remember people making jokes about Minecraft YouTubers in particular being notorious for being freaks behind the scenes. Looking at the track record of the dreamsmp members, well, statistics don't lie. The people outside of the fandom looking in when it was at its most notorious saw 3 things: Minecraft YouTubers, loud teenagers on the internet, and an outlandishly popular piece of media. Like, we were causing record-breaking viewer numbers on Twitch. Multiple stadiums of people type numbers. This fandom was never good at keeping to its own bubble, and anyone not into it could either passively ignore it or shit on it. And knowing how the internet is, guess what most people chose to do? Shit on it. They chose to shit on it so bad. And let me say, it is not fun being at such a vulnerable age, a young teenager, and being treated like you're the scum of the earth for liking something. I can vouch for that with personal experience, okay? It fucking sucked to be new to the online world and see dreamsmp fans D&I in the bios of so many people's social media profiles. It sucked to look at giant Google Docs, people compiled purely of evidence that the creators of the thing I loved were shitty people. And I know I wasn't alone in that feeling because I had a lot of friends who liked the dreamsmp at the same time as me, and they all felt exactly the same. Even now in the Big 26, I still feel a little embarrassed to admit that I was in the dreamsmp fandom, but I'm not letting myself feel that anymore though. And let me tell you why. It doesn't fucking matter, and it never did. The way things worked within the fandom was something that outsiders never saw, nor did they care to. The subgroups of the dreamsmp fandom were extensive, and I can fairly confidently make a blanket statement when I say that they were often at odds with each other. Where I was at in the fandom, which was mainly Quackity and the Sleepy Boys Inc. side of it, There were a lot of people who hated fans of Dream, or the Dream Team as it were, as a whole, and I counted myself as a part of those haters. Yeah, I had Dream Team fans DNI in my bio, okay? And it was because it made me feel morally superior to do so. Dream was the guy that was under the spotlight of being shit on by the general populace more than any other member of the server, and that meant if you liked him or the people associated with him, you were essentially just as bad. Of course, that presents a problem. Being associated with Dream meant two very different things depending on where you stood. If you were in it, watching Wilbur Soot, Phil's Tommy in it, etc., kept you pretty far removed from Dream. I could go on a tangent making a tier list of dsmp members based on how associated with Dream they were, for God's sake. We were not playing around about that. But if you weren't in the fandom, it all looked exactly the same. Your Tubos and your Nihachus were just as bad as your Dreams and your George Not Founds to the eyes of people who weren't in the fandom. And that's where that internal moral hierarchy falls apart completely. It just did not matter, it never did, and yet we treated it like literally anyone gave a fuck, and they just didn't. I remember when I was 15, I genuinely believed that if I had Dream Team fans DNI in my TikTok bio, it would make the dsmp fan DNI people like me or tolerate me enough to let me follow them. And did it? No, of course not. And why did I care? Because I was an insecure teenager desperate for the approval of people who I realistically wouldn't even like spending time with to begin with. I look back on that train of thought and can only marvel at how silly it is, but how serious it felt to me and the other DreamSMP fans like me at the time. And yeah, okay, it turned out that Dream is a freak and he's about as emotionally mature as his teenage fanbase. But that's what you get when you put a random citizen into the view of millions of people, a mixed bag. Most people aren't going to be able to be famous and metabolize it properly, or even well. Some of them are great at it and some of them aren't, and regardless of that, some of the people from both categories are gonna be pieces of shit. I guess what I'm getting at is that people aren't infallible. The phenomenon of the DreamSMP fandom isn't new, but I think it's a really good case study for how the modern era has been the host of a sharp cultural trend towards a moral definitiveness that I feel does very little to benefit us. If you look at the bigger picture, what do we get out of creating such a fine line between a good or bad person? No one can wholly be summed up just by the bad things they've done. And now, don't take that as me defending shitty YouTubers, because I immediately think of someone who, is a bad person objectively, so I'm sure I'm not alone in that. You can choose a shitty YouTuber. I'm sure it's the one that I'm thinking of, but regardless, I want you to take this as me saying it's not possible to really know what someone's deal is based on whatever drama they get involved in that exposes their bad behavior. You can make your moral judgment about them. I'm not saying you can't, but just know that when you do, it can never be completely accurate just on principle. I don't know, it's a case-by-case thing for me, and I think it should be that way for other people too, honestly. Okay, this is probably a hot take, but whatever. Wilbur Soot definitely should not have a platform online, but to me, it's because it seems to me that he's severely mentally ill and needs to take a turn inwards and work on himself instead of putting himself in such a vulnerable position as being a public figure. No, I don't think he's an evil, irredeemable person, and yes, he's done some shitty things, but I want to see him actually fix himself and make up for that rather than fall deeper into it because the internet has decided there's no going back for him. But, okay, I think we've gotten a bit off topic here. So, let me wrap this up by just saying that all of this obsession with being on a higher moral tier than other people is pointless and just generally an incredibly petty and self-serving ordeal. Nobody was gaining anything from shitting on the DreamSMP, just like nobody was gaining anything from playing semantics about which YouTuber is okay to like and which isn't. Personally, I want to go into 2026 keeping that thought at the forefront of my mind whenever I engage with internet drama. And if you do that as well, I think the world could be just a little more nuanced. And in such a polarizing social climate as we're in right now, that would be wonderful. I would love for people to think with more nuance. That is my number one wish, okay? But okay, that's all I've got for you. If you enjoyed, maybe I'll do another video like this. I don't know. It depends on if I have anything else to say. Which I might not. I don't know. We'll see how this goes. So, If you are here at the end, thank you for giving me the time of day, and I hope you enjoyed me yapping.